Today, we are on another interesting episode of Mike Uncensored podcast. My name is Aziz Ayonshola, and I am your host on this podcast. Today, as we always do, we have a journalist who has carved a niche for himself. He is someone with a unique and enriching experience, and I'm very sure you are going to get to know that in the course of our interaction. He is someone who has used his pen to speak truth to the power. In fact, by using his pen, he has added credence to the popular cliche that pen is mightier than sword. The person I'm talking about today is Dr. Festus Adedayo. You are welcome, sir.
Thank you for having me.
I want to sincerely thank you for, within a short period of notice, you gave us the audience to come and meet you here today. So thank you very much, sir.
It's a pleasure.
Now, sir, I want to start this way. When I was going through the internet to get some things to read more about you, I came across a quote. He said, and I quote, Festus Adedayo is an author, he's a political scientist, a lawyer, a columnist, and someone with inexplicable anger towards injustice. Is that correct, sir?
Absolutely.
I want you to tell us the story behind that.
Well, the story has to do with my upbringing. Enveloped into my story is the story of someone who rose against the norm. Against the norm, in that by the virtue of my upbringing, I wasn't expected to maybe uphold some of the issues, some of the virtues that I uphold. To begin with,
Okay.
my father was a policeman,
Okay.
and so we went. He was transferred from one police station to the other. The one that I recollect very vividly was Ilesha police station.
Okay.
And so we lived in the barracks. And of course, a lot of injustices happen in police barracks.
Okay.
So I also rose against the norm because the usual thought or narrative is that children of policemen hardly make good. And so I lived in the barracks.
Is it true from your home?
Yeah, well, that's what I mean. Even in the barracks, people say it, and apparently people tend to couch that out of the fact that injustices happen with policemen in the barracks, and so law of karma also overtake them, and it does that via their children. I've written about a man called Ifine, a young man called Ifine, who went with my father to the Ilesha Akure Expressway one day. My father was of the signals section.
Okay.
And so what that meant was that he was in the telecommunications department of the police. So they rarely go out. But when there are critical moments, and the police they have a short supply of policemen, they deploy some of their officers. So this particular day, my father was made to lead a team of policemen to the Ilesha Akure Expressway.
Okay.
And from the story that my father told thereafter, they were there. I think it was in late in the night.
Okay.
And this young policeman called Ifine. My father sat somewhere far away from other policemen, and they got to a place where the young policeman called Ifeanyi was searching a vehicle, and inside the boot he found it filled to the brim with money.
Okay.
And so Ifeanyi came to my father and said, "Oh God, that man has money all over him. Kill him now. And so carry the money."
A young police officer?
Yes, it was a constable.
Wow.
And my father said he was alarmed. And so knew that if he didn't take action, this young man could kill the man and kill him. He was a drunk, really. The young Ifeanyi was a drunk. People knew him in Elisha police barracks. And so my father prevailed and got the man to leave immediately and thereafter. And so, but Ifeanyi wasn't happy. So that told me that there could have been many other people
like that.
And so, a lot of injustices happen in police barracks. But I was determined that I was going to make good in life.
So before you go on, my question is, did it turn out to be that way? That police children are always
rascals? You may not empirically verify it. But first, police children are always very rascally.
Yeah.
And you also find situations, I don't know if it obtains at the moment, that they get their children locked up in police cells when they do something that was, when they were aberrant. So the parents themselves, the fathers of those children, got them locked up in police cells. And that began a process of their criminality.
From what you just said now, using these incidents, the scenario just painted, should we say you turn out to be this successful because of your own determination or because of your father's?
I wouldn't know, but I know. I don't think it was that. Perhaps it's because he wasn't part of the general corps of policemen. As I told you, he was always at his desk in the signals. You understand? Perhaps it was because he didn't have opportunity to partake with them, or that he just didn't want. But I know that he was a righteous person. Righteous in the sense that he, at some point, we were attending Pentecostal churches. When he was an interpreter. In church. He was a devout Christian. Perhaps that was
that really helped.
So that could be what helped. But I know that right from the beginning, I just turned out to be somebody who was very studious. I remember some few years ago, my one of my cousins said, I knew this guy was going to be, I don't know what she meant by that I knew Festus was going to be a great person because he was always reading. You always see him reading one book or the other. I don't know, because I wasn't a very brilliant person while in school.
Talking about while in school, before we reach, that's the part I'm really interested in, your professional trajectory. Let's look at your academic background. Just want to
so because my father was a policeman, that meant that I was changing one school for another. I remember that I schooled in Ikire. I think St. John's Primary School in Ikire. We went from Ikire to Iwo. I attended Ajangbala DC Primary School. And by 1979, I was in Primary 5. And I attempted
secondary school examination.
And I was successful. So, but I think I was going to attend Baptist High School Iwo, if I'm not mistaken. But it was at that time that my father was transferred again to Ikirun. So I started at Akiorun Grammar School, 1979. I think I left Akiorun in 1980 or 81 for Elisha. And so I finished secondary school at Cherubim and Seraphim High School, Elisha. That was 1984. Thereafter, I worked for a short period at International Breweries Limited in Ilesha, Brewers of Trophy. And thereafter, I went to Ibadan Polytechnic Esauke campus in 1985
did you study?
to study secretarial administration.
Okay.
It's a long story, of why I chose to study secretarial administration, but let's leave that.
Okay.
I finished at Ibadan Poly, the main campus.
Okay, main campus.
Because there was rationalization of courses.
Okay. Yeah.
I think 1986 or there.
The same course?
I finished the same course in 1987 in Ibadan Polytechnic. And thereafter, I gained admission to do HND, but I told myself I wasn't going to go further because I wasn't proud of being I felt the rigor in secretarial administration wasn't much. So
you felt the rigors wasn't much.
Yes, I felt it wasn't because at that
time you had an idea.
Yes, what I wanted to be. I wanted to be either a journalist or a lawyer. So in that wise, I wanted to study mass communication. I couldn't study mass communication. If I had studied mass communication at the Ibadan Polytechnic, I probably wouldn't want to leave. I wouldn't want to go for a degree course. But because my father didn't have money, I was perhaps the only one he could effectively sponsor. He actually wanted me to go. He wanted his children
maybe
to
because probably are you the only male child of the family?
No, I was the firstborn. As at that time, we were 4 boys.
So he feels that probably if you could train the firstborn,
I would be able to train the others. Exactly. But I chose to go to the university thereafter. My father felt that the few years he spent training me at the Polytechnic could be a waste. But today it's not a waste because if you see me on the computer now, I could type very fast. So I gained admission to the University of Lagos in 1988 to study philosophy. I actually wanted to study mass communication.
From sec admin to philosophy.
And I tell you one very interesting story. As at that time, I just wanted to go to the university. As I told you, I wanted to study mass communication, but I didn't meet the cutoff. So I felt if I started with philosophy, I could port, as they say, to mass communication or whatever. But I remember what happened. So when I was given Mama Sophie Oluwole, Professor Oluwole, was actually the woman who ensured that I got that admission. Because one of my friends was close to, they attended the same church together, and she was able to swing it for me. Because I also didn't meet the cutoff.
For philosophy.
As I told you, I wasn't that brilliant a person, but I was very studious.
So when is the turning point?
So let's continue. But I was reading. I remember my father encouraged me to read. Every weekend I was going to Adedayo bookshop in Ilesha to buy one novel or the other. The second week, I remember 1 naira 70 kobo. My father would give me 1 naira 70 kobo. I'll go to Adedayo bookshop. I read virtually all I've forgotten the series now. Evil, My Love, the South African Experience. I read virtually all of them, and then so when I gained admission to the university to study philosophy, I was in a dilemma. What does philosophy entail? I didn't know. My father was apprehensive. And he went around asking people what I would do if I come out from the university. He said, that guy will be a liability.
Wow.
So because he can't even be a teacher. Because he doesn't have a teaching job. He's not studying maybe English or mathematics, which could make him to start teaching. And some said he would be a priest. And some said he would be an atheist. So my father was really despondent. But I was bent on going to the university. It was so bad that when I got to the university, my first year, my second year, my results were very bad because I remember my father would always say, I don't want you to be a liability. I don't want you to come out of the university and I'll be the one buying clothes for you again. So that despondency infected me. So year 1, year 2 at the University of Lagos, my results were very bad. But someday, I'm sure you Nigerians will remember these great journalists who were killed by Charles Taylor in Liberia. Chris Imodibe, and Tayo Awotusi. And so I was in the University of Lagos Library one day, and I remember I was reading the Daily Times, and I read the story of Chris Imodibe. That Chris finished from the department of my department, Department of Philosophy, University of Lagos in 1984, and then became that great a journalist. I remember I stood up inside the library and told myself I can be a journalist as well, because earlier I had written things that many people will read and say, "Oh, you write well." And so from that moment I decided I was going to be a journalist. Every money my father sent to me, I'll use the money to type articles. I'll go to Punch, I'll go to Guardian, I'll go to virtually all the newspapers in Nigeria. And I remember the very first day that my piece was published in the Guardian. In my hostel, I was almost rolling on the floor. That almighty
that was
Guardian.
How many months later?
That should be, I was in year 2.
The time you realized that you going to be a journalist, and the time
I remember
your piece was published. Like, what's the?
No, it shouldn't be more than 1 month or 1.5 months, because immediately I got that realization. I started getting articles typed, and I'll go to all these newspapers. I remember the day I met Professor Latujidare. I took my piece to him. He was the chairman of the editorial board of the Guardian. I said, "Young man," he read through the first paragraph. I said, "Young man, are you sure you wrote this?" I said, "I did." And when that piece was published. So by the time I left University of Lagos in 1992, I had written several articles. The Campus Life section, Sunday Guardian. I remember, I think it was shortly when I left the university, I wrote a piece, some kind of a rejoinder to the piece written by my lecturer, Professor Campbell Shitu Momo, CS Momo. He's late now. He wrote a piece entitled, I've forgotten the title now. Something against oath taking. It was published in the Guardian on Sunday. So I wrote another piece where, I not only did I rejoin the piece that my professor wrote, I told him he was talking absolute nonsense.
Wow.
And my piece was entitled "The Dilemma of an Oath." I think the title of his own piece was "An Oath on Incorruptibility."
Okay.
And my own piece was
The Dilemma
of an Oath. So where I took all what he said to the cleaners. I remember he also wrote a rejoinder where he said, "Festus Adedayo is our son in the department. We are proud of him." After that, he now said, "However," then he began to pull down all my averments, down by pieces, into pieces rather. So much that in 1992, I served at Yelwa Yauri Zonal Social Welfare Office, Yelwa Yauri, Kebbi State. I still kept on writing. My roommates in Yelwa then, who later, I think is a commissioner of police now, Mohammed Babakura, reminded me recently that I wrote a piece which became a major issue in Yelwa, and that I was nearly attacked by the youths of Yelwa. The title of that piece is Yelwa Yauri, a town of filth and rot.
Wow.
And the youth read it and said, "How could that Yoruba man write this kind of against us?" But my zonal inspector then, Baba Ladan, is from Niger State, and some other people waded in, and thank God nothing happened to me. So in 1993, I got admission to the University of Ibadan to study political science.
Hold on. After you finished philosophy in Unilab?
Yes. So I did my master's in political science.
Political science, okay.
At the University of Ibadan.
Yeah.
I think we entered late 93 or early 94. So my classmates were Professor Remi Ayede.
Okay.
We also had Professor Wale Adebayo. Many of my friends are now professors. I'm the only one.
It's not a professor.
So I left that, and then that same 1995, I remember how I came into. By the time, okay, so my friend Professor Wale Adebayo, he was my classmate. I told you earlier.
Okay.
Told me that his friends who were in the Tribune were recruiting that could I go to the Tribune. So I just did a photocopy of just 100 of my published articles.
Just 100.
I selected 100. So I went to the Tribune. I remember that day. The editor-in-chief, they took me to the editor-in-chief. Okay. I told my roommates when I left UI that I was going to Tribune. So perhaps an interview. And so in the evening, they took me to the editor-in-chief, Mr. Biodu Oduwole. The person who took me was my editor, Shegun Olatunji.
Okay, Olatunji, okay.
And so we got there. Mr. Shina Kawunishe, a friend of the editor-in-chief, was also there. And so when we got there, he said, young man, do you have any experience in journalism? Of course, you know, that was going to cut short my dream because I hadn't practiced journalism
as a child.
I had then. So I didn't even answer him. I just dropped on his table my photocopied articles, 100 of them. So we started leafing through. We published in the Guardian, in the Punch.
So what else? What experience?
He said, let him begin work immediately. Really? And so I did the production of that day with the Sunday Tribune.
Wow.
And I didn't get to my hostel until about midnight. So thereafter began my journalism.
That was how you started professionally.
Yes, and to the glory of God, my writings showcased me up to the point that in 1998, of course, at some point, I resigned from the Tribune.
Why?
And joined some of my friends, Wale Adebayo, now Professor Adedayo Akonde,
okay.
Shegun Olatunji, Dr. Shegun Olatunji, Bodi Opeshetan, who just founded a newspaper called Omega Weekly. Okay. It was funded by pro-democracy people like Chief Bola Ige and some others. And so we started the newspaper. And
so you resigned in Nigerian Tribune to
start that newspaper with my friends.
Okay.
But we ran into troubled waters
financially.
Okay. And by 1998, I returned to the Tribune. And the Tribune accepted me. Go back to the political desk. And that 1998, my editor then, Femi Adeoti, it was just a happenstance that I started writing column for the Tribune. Okay. What happened was that my friend and colleague, Mr. Tunde Babalola, who works with Globacom now, was writing a page 3 column. I think he entitled it Aside Views. Okay. So he was going to go on leave. I think a month or so leave, or 2 months leave. So he wanted somebody to deputize for him so that when he comes back, he will take it up from there. So he came to me and said, I should come and be writing the column, take it up. I said, a column? That I didn't have that kind of... So he said, no, that he believed that I was the one who could. So I said, okay, let me try. So I started writing it. So when Tunde Babalola came back, about 1 or 2 months after, I said, come and take your column. This thing is a major burden to me. He said, no, I can't write it any longer. From what I was told, you write better. I said, write better. And so that was how I started. And to be able to choose the title, I remember myself, Debo Abdullahi, who is the editor of the Tribune now, Tunde Babalola. We sat down to choose the title. And I said, look, what of something that is burning? Because
that is boring.
That burns.
Okay. Burning. Okay.
That could I choose? So we agreed on flickers. Festus Adedayo's flickers. Okay. It burns, but the burning is not permanent. It is temporary, but it burns anyway. Okay. And so, because of the nature of what I write, some people will express disagreement. It will splutter
elicit certain reactions.
Yeah, of course, I get reactions.
Both encouraging and
negative.
Okay.
People, And so when today people say, How are you attacking President Bola Tinubu? And I tell them that, look, just go to the archives and see the trajectory of my writing. 1998, when I started writing, I wrote against General Sani Abacha. Don't forget, he was the head of state that time. I wrote against General Abdulsalami Abubakar. I wrote against General Olusegun Obasanjo. So much that when the governor of Enugu State wanted to appoint me as his media advisor, the Obasanjo people said, no, that guy is our enemy. He attacks us. But the governor told them that, look, when I bring him on board, your enemies are reduced by one. So I also wrote against President Yaradua. That was the time I was at National Life. I remember a very, very, very critical piece I wrote when he took ill. When the presidency didn't reveal the state of his health. And people were saying that we should be praying for the president.
As a president, you could govern.
Yes, that I could govern from anywhere. And I wrote this piece with the title, Why We Should Neither Pray, Fast, Nor Pray for Yaradua. Because I said, look, this man...
Don't even know.
And so I remember when I wrote against President Obasanjo, his media advisor then, I think he was the chief press secretary, Mr. Tunji Oseni, said that enemies of the government planted me, in Tribune. I remember, because I went to the presidential media chat of, I think, year 2000, with John Momo as the anchor, one Kechin Wanko, and one other guy from The Guardian, from New Nigerian, who were the live broadcast of the presidential media. And I asked the president very critical questions. One of the questions I asked, which looked rather like what the Guardian wrote recently against the president, was that I said, Mr. President, I was to President Olusegun Obasanjo. Because I'm closer to a man called the common man, I'm able to know his feelings more than you. That the common man is saying that the life he lived under the military about 1-2 years ago was better than the life he's living under you, a supposed Democrat. And Obasanjo was very furious, but he answered me. He critically, highlighted all his programs, which perhaps no military government could have done. And now he had brought development to the
people. Before we go far, there's you mentioned something I really want people to to have an insight is how it happened. You said you were at Tribune when the governor of Enugu State appointed.
Yes.
How did it happen? Was it that you were called? Was it?
Okay, so let me tell you what. I remember in 2003 when, but then my column had become really very famous. And of course, once in a while, I wrote about my state of Ondo. And so then Dr. Olusegun Adagu was the Minister of Power or something. And so I wrote some critical pieces against him. And so when he became governor, he offered me. I was actually told I would be his chief press secretary. And of course, a young man then, I was excited. So, but when he was sworn in, the day he was sworn in, he announced someone else, our Egmont Soji Alakuro, as the chief press secretary. And so I said, fine. And a few days after, he announced me as a press secretary. And I felt that was beneath me. And I made up my mind I wasn't going to accept the offer. So when it was, so I told them I wasn't going to take the offer. Apparently, when it was published in the newspaper, that story was published in some newspapers. It was on the radio in Ondo State. My father told those who care to listen that I know my son won't accept. And so it was that publication that the governor of Enugu State read. Let me also give you a background to that. By then, I had only been to Enugu State once. I remember there was maybe a few months before then, his chief press secretary then, Igboneku Ogazimora, invited editors. I was deputy editor of the Tribune there. Invited editors on a facility tour to come and see the activities of the governor. Okay. So we were at the ESCO chambers, and the governor said we should introduce ourselves. And I stood up and said my name was Festus Adedayo. And the governor said, Festus Adedayo, I'm your fan. I read you. I read you weekly. So I guess that was why. Okay. So he used to read my articles. And so when a few days after that appointment, the Agagu appointment was announced. Okay. The governor read it in Enugu State. Okay. And felt that he could snatch this boy from Agagu. And so the special advisor then, the Ogazimora, called me on media and said the governor wanted to offer me an appointment. And I was appointment in Enugu State. I remember my late mother was with me that day when I received that appointment, that news. My mother said, over my dead body,
my son,
that my son
go to where they eat,
where they eat human beings. That was all in our ignorance. That was all she said. And I tell you, so the governor said I should come to Enugu State. To Enugu, I got there, and I remember that they said, I really want you in Enugu. I promise to give you all that you need. I'll give you a car, I'll give you a house to live. Say bring your children to your 10 schools here and all that. He made so many of us. After he had finished speaking, I said, Your Excellency, give me 2 weeks to go and pray about it. Unfortunately, I think a few days after I got to Ibadan, the news was announced all over. And I tell you, my 4 years stay in Enugu State are one of my best years on earth. Okay. First, I was able to, as I told you, I had never gone past the southwest as at that time. Okay. So my knowledge of the ethnicities in Nigeria was far between. So it was an opportunity to see the Southeast people in action. And I tell you, I worked under a man who was protective of me. If we got to any meeting, if anybody started speaking in Igbo, he would say, I have told you, don't let Adedayo think that we want to sell him here. Speak English. And after saying that, he would say, Adedayo, you need to go and marry an Igbo girl so that she'll be teaching you Igbo. So that was where I picked my culinary preference for Igbo food. I was dashing from Nwanyi Onitsha on the Owerri Road to another point eating, and I enjoyed myself. My friends today, I picked them from there. And so it was one of my best years.
Was there any cultural shock?
There were so many cultural shocks.
Can you just give an instance?
One cultural shock was, and I start off with my son. My son is a graduate of law now. He was a 3-year-old boy when we got to Enugu in 2003, and so we were staying at Presidential Hotel. Okay. And so one day I took him to my friends inside the hotel. And when he got there, he prostrated, and all of them laughed. And so when they laughed, my son started crying. Yeah. So when we got to our room, I said, look, we are in a different culture. You don't prostrate to anybody. Yes, show respect. You can say, good morning, sir. You are even free to thrust your hand forward for a handshake, with an elder. What you won't do here. Exactly. But you don't prostrate. So so that was my first cultural shock. Okay. You could also call it a shock. I found out that the stew that I'll be eating didn't have oil. Exactly. They call it oil. Ofe salad.
They don't use.
You won't use, and
they
they
use
call
pepper.
us.
They don't use so much
They
pepper
call
like
us
exactly.
Ofe Manu, that our soup is always suffused
exactly
with oil. So,
yeah.
but I met wonderful people. One day that I will never forget was the day. Don't forget I came to Enugu as special assistant on public communication.
Sure.
And about a year after, the governor wanted to rejig his media team.
What's it about?
Igboneku Gazimora, who was special advisor on media, was made commissioner for information. So the governor brought one man, Osita Ugwoti, from Isut, Enugu State University of Technology. I think it was their PRO. Brought him to become the chief press secretary. And so, there was a media team. I was there. Obiora Ifo, who is the publicity secretary of Labour Party now, was there with me. We have Charlie Agbo. We had, even later, we had Senator Ayo Gweze. He wasn't a senator then, Ayo Gweze. We had Ment Nome. We had Dan Wome. We also and some other. We have so we have late. What's his name now? He's late. So many of them. So we were there, and one day, the larger media team was complaining that the outsider that the governor brought wasn't treating us fairly. It was cutting our allowances, because the money it was the head of the media who applied for funds if we wanted to travel. We complained that it was cutting our allowances. We were complaining among us, but we didn't know all those complaints had got to the governor. So one day, I was in my office when one of the SSS operatives came and said the governor wanted me. So my office was just beside the Lion building. So I went, it was in the morning, and my colleagues were at the front of the Lion of our office, the press unit. So I went there, the governor said, Adedayo, I've told Osita Ugwoti to hand over to you. So what name do you want to bear? Do you want chief press secretary? You want special advisor? What do you want to be? I was just looking at him because I didn't know what to say. It sounded strange to me that a Yoruba man would be made to be the head of the media team of a governor in Enugu State. But I don't know. I can't remember how I answered him. So I left, and so my colleagues who were outside the office said they were waiting for me. They said, "What did the governor say?" I said, I don't know what he meant. They said I should be the head of the media. Do you know that they carried me shoulder high? These were Igbo people. All of them Igbo. I was the only Yoruba among them. And the governor had just told them that their kinsman was losing his job. That's Osita Ugwoti. And that a Yoruba man was going to take over the headship of the media. And they were celebrating me. It became something like an opera. Because they were shouting, "Hey, congratulations, we're happy." I learned a major lesson there. And that informs, I will not queue behind my kinsman if he's doing evil, ahead of somebody of another tribe. Because what that told me was that my colleagues saw some kind of excellence in me and felt that regardless of my ethnicity, I was the one who could do who could provide what they needed. There was trust, which ethnicity could not capture. They saw excellence in me, and they felt that rather than Osita Ugwoti, it's late now because
maybe they saw the Omoluabi virtue.
Yeah, something like that. Because we were bonded. We were always going out to eat onugbu. It was not about where we came from. It was our contribution.
Now, my question is, are you now surprised with the level of hostility,
Yes.
coming from
I know. And when
our brothers from the eastern
yes, when
part.
you read
Now,
that,
what exactly happened between then and now?
if you read my articles, I've always not reneged from canvassing ethnic amity.
Okay.
I've always said that something, as at that time, it wasn't as if the narrative of that misnarrative, what I'll call a misnarrative of the claim that Yoruba, in the person of Chief Obafemi Awolowo, betrayed Igbo people during the war. You know that narrative
Exactly,
is potent.
sure, yeah.
It was also there that time, but
but it wasn't that.
But it was gradually getting peeled off.
Okay.
So what that meant, I remember at some point when the governor, Dr. Chimaroke Namani, was having some kind of disagreement with elder statesman, Dr. C.C. Ono.
Okay.
And as the governor's advisor, publicist, I will have to reply C.C. Ono, on behalf of the governor.
Sure.
And then so people were saying, I remember some people were saying, could he talk to Chief Abraham Adesoya
like that?
Because that was the Yoruba leader. And this is our leader. But the governor defended me. He was always there for me when I needed to withdraw from the space. He would tell me, okay. Withdraw from space because our people are complaining about you. And then when I needed to also be there. As at that time, I saw Enugu as home, and even till now. And you see that what I did, there were occasions when some people will enter my office, very expansive office like this, and they will start speaking Igbo, and I will say, I can't speak Igbo. They say, then what are you doing here? But I was thoroughly assimilated. And I remember recently when I went for the burial of the mother of my friend, Dan Wome, in Ozala. And people saw me, they say, Yoruba people are very, very, they are not there was a particular word, many of them. Yoruba people are good people. Oh. Are you saying that 20-something years ago, after you left here, you are still attentive to the relationship you established with your Igbo people? I have relationship with Igbo people today. And one of the things you notice is that I pronounce their names very well.
Sure, yes.
Because I lived, and one of the things I learned was that if you mispronounce somebody's name, they are not likely to take kindly to it. So I learned to pronounce Ngozi, not Ngozi, as our people will pronounce the name. I learned to pronounce Chineye, the way I should. And then I gave birth to 2 children in Enugu at Parkland Hospital. One I named Chiagoze, and that's my son, who we gave birth to in 2006. And my daughter is Chidimma. So, I still see Enugu as my second home, and I dash in and out of Enugu. The current governor was our chief of staff that time.
Wow.
And I've known him for 20-something years.
Okay, now let's look at that trajectory from Enugu. Then after that, let me ask you this question. Okay, where were you not part of the government for the second term? I don't know. Governor Inamani.
Okay, what happened was I came during his second tenure.
Okay.
He's in the class of
1999. Okay.
But after 2007, I remember I was also head of the governor's media team that midwifed the governorship of Sullivan Chime, who became the governor. Don't forget that he was our attorney general. And so I remember there was a particular day that we were in Agbani. Agbani is
where the law school is.
Yes, Agbani is the governor's village. Yeah. And so the 3 of us were in the room. Governor Namani and the man who was going to be governor,
Sullivan
Chime, and myself. And the man Namani said, Sullivan, when you become governor, Adedayo will continue with you. And he said, yes. Adedayo is part of the Ebano family. And of course, but I was the first person he removed. As at that time, he was weary of the Namani boys and had made up his mind to create his own empire, so to speak. So on May 29, but before then, I wasn't interested in staying any longer in Enugu. Before the election, I had taken my family out of Enugu, to Ibadan, back to Ibadan. And my plan was, I had had enough. I wanted to practice journalism. And so 2007, after the election, in fact, the day Sullivan Chime was inaugurated as the governor, I think the second day I left Enugu. And but I was still in touch with Governor Naman. And then when he went to the Senate, I was with him in the Senate. But at the time, my friend Louis Odion came to Abuja and said, "Look, we are establishing a newspaper, and we want you to be the chairman editorial board." That paper eventually became Tinubu's newspaper. That's National Life. So I became chairman editorial board. And so I was there until 2011. When I became governor.
Senator Biola Jimobi.
Yes.
Now, before that, I'm still going to ask that. How did that happen too? That's because that's part of the unique experience. You said you are the chairman editorial board National Life.
Yes.
The paper owned by the present president.
Yes.
But now, ironically, you happen to be one of the ardent critics of. Was it that there was something you had seen then that informed your writings now, or what happened then has nothing to do with what you are writing about him now? What happened?
Well, throughout, I was in National Life, I think if I'm not mistaken, from 2018 to 2011. Throughout that period, I never set my eyes on then former Governor Bola Tinubu. I never set my eyes on him. I never had any interaction with him. I was doing my job as the chairman, editorial board of a newspaper.
You must have been, to
be fair to him, nobody ever told me to write any editorial comment to tilt it in favor of
the owner.
Never. To be fair to Tinubu. Of course, you were not expected to write against the owner of the newspaper as well. But that was how it was. I was just doing my job. So it was just coincidental. And so when people now talk about that he hates Tinubu, he's always attacking him, I said, look, go to the archives and go and check my trajectory as a column writer.
You have always been
written against the establishment.
What I will refer to as media activism.
Exactly, something in that mode. Earlier you referenced the claim that I have
inexplicable
anger against injustice. And I tell you, there was a day, at some point, I was going to lose my life if I didn't press the pedal to slow down on my anger against the establishment. I remember I went for an event with my editor colleagues along the expressway, and I remember, so as we were coming, the police stopped us. And the policeman said I should bring I had two of my colleagues inside the car. He said I should bring my papers. I brought the papers. Then the guy asked me for either MCR or whatever. Tafa Balogun was the IG. A few days before then, he said that particular paper was not necessary. And so I told the policeman. And so the man went with my documents. And I went inside the car. I was going to start. The guy said, I used this narrative to write a piece that was published in the Guardian. The man cocked his gun. I said, if you move an inch, I'm quoting him, if I not waste you and then go bury you the second they called me a bastard.
Wow.
And so my friends went and told my father, my late father, and the man was on the verge of prosperity too. Please, they will kill you. And so I that kind of disdain against the establishment. I also took it to. I had several encounters with the police, and you begin to wonder whether my father made a very deep statement that they said, I brought you up with police money.
Why would you?
So why are you not against? Why would you hate policemen like this? And but now they are my friends. I've tempered. But perhaps I can't. I'm not a saint myself, and I cannot. I doubt. I mean, in terms of leadership, maybe that kind of political leadership, I don't have any quality of a political leader. I'm almost a lone ranger. You can't be a politician, a political leader if you're a lone ranger.
Sure.
I have, other than maybe Lasisi or Lagudu is my friend. I don't have friends. I don't go to anybody's house.
Probably because
I'm always a lone ranger.
Maybe because of the nature of your work, because you have, you have to be a voracious leader.
But no, I'm not that. I think that is a myth. I'm not a voracious reader.
So you know yourself, and you just make peace with that person.
Yeah. I don't.
You don't even try
friends.
to like get along. Probably get out of that persona.
The only thing I'm addicted to is
reading.
No reading. I don't read that much.
Okay.
I read on the go.
Okay.
If you enter my library, if I do tell myself, if I'm able to read 5% of the, but I collect books. I have so many books in my library. I mean, it was helped by my being in Enugu.
Okay.
Igbodeku Ogazimora. An avid reader, an avid collector of books. And you really don't forget that with Governor Nnamani that time, we were always going across the country on lectures. So each place we went, our allowances, we spend every dime cash buying books. So that was what Ogazimora was doing. So we were in a competition to buy books. But if I succeed in reading 5% of the books in my library, my life will be totally transformed. I read, but maybe read a chapter in a book. But not that I can sit down and read the whole book from morning, no. But I mean, that's just me.
Now, I want to ask a question, but before I ask that question, I want us to look into your second appointment.
Okay.
Now, the question, I want you to link the second appointment to this question. The question is the issue of Ajurin Galile.
Okay.
A lot of reports have been filtering out that you have this Iman relations. He wasn't really a good journalist, probably because he's coming from the broadcast journalism. That was why using. Now, my first question is this: why is it that most times only print journalists that are appointed as number one? I'm coming, sir. Then number two, what are the things that a good spokesperson for a governor, a president, what are the values, virtues, character, what are the things that they should have before they can be deemed successful? Now, you're going to ask that question, but you are going to ask, I want us to look into how were you appointed into Senator Ajola Ajimobi government.
Okay, so don't forget I said I became chairman editorial board of National Live newspaper. So the name of the newspaper was embossed on my card, the official card I was given. So one day, a man stopped me. We became friends thereafter. I said, I lived in Elebu.
Okay.
Elebu area of Ibadan.
Okay.
And so the man stopped me and said, he wants me to be on this media and strategy team of one man who wanted to be governor of Oyo State. On the platform of AC, Action Congress. I said, what was the man's name? He said, Abiola Ajimobi. I said, sorry, I don't want to have any relationship with any politician. The person, prevailed on me, and that the man would be happy. But earlier, I remember that I had met Senator Ajimobi before when he wanted to go to the Senate. It was through our Egmont, Yonju Adegbite. So Adedayo was his publicist that time. I was in the Tribune, so he wanted me to meet Ajimobi in his house at Oluyole. So I met Ajimobi, we spoke, and then when I was leaving, he offered me money. I remember it's Uncle Adedayo who can tell this story.
Okay.
And just gave me, I think it was 50,000, and I rejected it. You can ask Uncle Yonju, he will tell you.
Why?
So not that I was a saint, but I don't know
just
why.
There was no need.
I felt there was no need for me to collect that money.
Because I came to...
Because perhaps if you had met me and if you had given me that money, I probably would have collected it. But after the interview, and I pride myself in the fact that I'm not a saint, but you won't buy me. If you meet me on the road and say take money, I have so many needs. I'll collect the money from you. So, according to Uncle Yonju, thereafter Ajimobi called me and said, "Are you sure this man will use this interview?" That I offered him money, he didn't collect. And Uncle Yonju said, "I know Festus, he will use it." And I used the interview. But we never got to meet until this man prevailed on me to come out. So I remember it was a Sunday. So I drove to Ajimobi's house, and then he engaged me. And so we were talking about his botched governorship,
in 2000,
when he was in ANPP.
2007.
And so I began to tell him what he himself was. He said, "Wow, I had the information on what happened."
Okay, would you like to share?
And he now said, "No, I don't think I should tell you."
Okay.
It's
not me personally. So
no, I don't think it's...
Okay.
Because it was what happened, why he didn't become governor. Because even though he won that election, what transpired, the information I had.
Okay.
So he also had got that information, and I was able to name the dramatic specimen involved. And say, "Wow, how did you get to know?"
You're a journalist now, you know things.
I said I have my sources. And so he liked me immediately. I said, "Well, I remember he was still using hair for me. Hey, why join me? Enjoy me, can't you?" But so few minutes after, I saw members of the strategy team coming in. Uncle Yonju Adegbite, Mr. Sodiq, News Agency of Nigeria, Abbas Aleshiloye. And so they started coming in, and I saw that they were my people. Wow. And so we were greeting, and so I just want to say, "So you know him?" So I think I said, I excused myself for that week. It was a meeting that was held fortnightly. And thereafter, I started attending the meeting sometimes before I left for Lagos in my office. So we continued until Ajimobi became the candidate of the AC. And then, of course, we anchored the media. And then along the line, when the election between him and Akala was to take place, he wanted me to be the media campaign director, what they call it. And I declined. I said no. He said, "Why?" I said, "Look, I have a job that I'm doing now. I'm the chairman of National Live Newspaper. I cannot, unless I'm resigning. I can't be." He said, "Then I should nominate somebody." And I told him that Uncle Yonju would, but that I will be doing the media, the one that related to the print media, that will also give Uncle Yonju ample support with my friend, my brother Tunde Moraino. And so we did. And thereafter, when he won, then people started jostling that they would be the man's media advisor. And Ajimobi, stood his ground and said, "No way." So when he became, of course, we started going with him. I will use my national life car, I will be on his convoy. Sometimes the police people will say, "This man, who is this man who's on?" So sometimes they will bypass my car and all that. But this day, 3 days after, so we moved to the presidential lodge of the government house. So we'll sit down there and be handling the media. So then Governor Ajimobi called me, Uncle Yonju Adedayo and Dr. Adeolu Adedayo, called me to his office at the presidential lodge with his diary. If you know Ajimobi very well, very methodical person. So he said, yesterday I was with Alhaji Lam Adeshina.
Okay.
And Alhaji asked me, who will be your SA media? And I said, it's Festus Adedayo. And Alhaji Lam said, over my dead body.
How would he say that?
And he said, I asked him, why did he say that? And he said, And Ajimobi said, Baba, I've told him to resign from his place of work. He's my media advisor. Let's move on. So, of course, Ajimobi had written what he called a SWOT analysis. Okay. My weaknesses, my strength. My weakness, one of the weaknesses was that I'm not from your state. What again? So, but my strength was he has a PhD. He has a PhD, which is an added advantage to my government. He has been in this position before. So that means he has an added advantage. So he said your plus outweighs your minuses. And so you are my media advisor. Then he went to Dr. Adeolu Akode. Minus, they said his own too. He had worked with the PDP. Don't forget that he was chief press secretary to Vice President Atiku Abubakar. And people said, no, you are bringing in PDP. But it's one of his strengths too was that he had a PhD in political science and all that. And he's a brilliant person. So that was the kind of person Ajimobi was. So he told Baba, and Baba was the two appointments that he made. Alhaji Lam didn't want. He also didn't want Dr. Akode as the chief of staff because he claimed that people said he was a PDP person. But at the end of the day, Ajimobi's obstinacy paid off for us.
How do you mean?
He was obstinate against somebody else would have said, Baba, is that what you want? So it's done. Give me another person. But Ajimobi could be obstinate.
So what people say is late Ajimobi's negative, being heavy. So,
yes. If he was convinced, but if you have a superior argument against Ajimobi, he would acknowledge the superiority of your argument. I remember, and I always tell these people this story. Of course, there are a lot of bootlickers who always surround people in government. There was a time when we were receiving adversarial attacks from some radio stations. There's a particular radio station. There was a particular radio station at that time that was always attacking us. And so some bootlickers came to Ajimobi to deal with that radio station. And including the Nigerian Tribune. He said negative stories were emanating from the Nigerian Tribune. And whenever I went to him to say, look, the media needed to do its job, he would say, no, it's because you worked with them. I'll say, Your Excellency, it is the way the media works. Yes, we can cultivate their friendship, but there are some things for the image of the media house itself. It needed to do what it needed to do. He didn't like the argument, so he kept on, but I stood my ground. We'll be at meetings, those bootlickers will say, Your Excellency, go and the master of that radio station, they didn't apply for the license the way they should. Can we pull it down? You say, yes, you are going to do it. At some point, they even told him that Tribune, that he should move against the Tribune because for some reasons. But I kept on telling him, Your Excellency, if we do it, we'll regret it.
So then let me ask a question. So if the people at the helms of affairs, so when they get into that office and became a monster, it is the people that
you see they are very, very. How do I put it now? I'm looking for the right English. When sometimes they are very. I can't find the correct English now. Sometimes they are so. They are. No, this word escapes me.
Yeah.
So what I'm trying to say is that the bootlickers can have their day. They do have their day.
Okay.
Their moments with the men in power. Because they feel that they are this English, I don't know why. So they do have their moments with people in power.
Okay.
And so when they tell them something, there are a tendency, because they won't know who their friends are.
So
and they won't be able, because a thin line exists that separates their friends and their enemies. And so let me finish this story. So and I don't know, Ajimobi was actually going to move against those two media houses. In fact, I remember there was the enmity that existed on account of those bootlickers, what those bootlickers were saying, that existed between Edmond Obilo and I at that time was huge.
Wow.
Because Edmond Obilo was doing his job as a media person. But most times, people will call the governor and say that your enemy, that guy is your enemy. They'll say, Baba Akonde. Now I'm forced to reveal the radio station. Baba Adedayo Akonde is your enemy. And, and they kept on, pulling that narrative, pushing that narrative. And the governor was also buying it. Some persons in government were the vanguard of that narrative. But I kept on saying, and I wasn't saying that because I loved Baba Akonde different. It was because I felt that, that the media should do its job. So one day, the people in the Tribune got me. Okay, sorry. Okay. I'll go into that. So there was a day that we now had in the company of our Attorney General then, my friend, Adedayo Joe. Okay. We had to meet Baba Aiku. Okay. He's late now. So we drove in my car from Baba Aiku's office and we went to Splash FM. So we held a meeting. Edmond Obilo sat. I also sat, Baba Akonde, Baba Aiku, and Adedayo Joe. And it was so tense that Edmond Obilo and I were pointing fingers at each other. And thereafter there was some kind of talk, of that anger. And today, Edmond Obilo and I are the best of friends. Then Tribune, they were going to commission their new printing machine. So some of my friends there asked me to invite the governor. So I invited him. He came. And that day was a very glorious day for him. That was the last day Mama H.I.D. Awolowo came to Tribune. They took photographs together. They celebrated Ajimobi. And so that showed him that, look, he's actually, they didn't have any enmity against him. They saw him as their friend. And so we drove from there to his house at Oliole Estate. And so in a convoy. And so a friend of mine who was one of those pushing that enmity narrative, and I now went to meet the governor as he was coming out of his car. And he said, Festus, I must thank you. And I'm quoting him verbatim. When people said we should attack this, you were the only one who stood your ground that we shouldn't do it. He said, today we reaped the dividends of what you canceled it. And I always tell people that if I had been with Ajimobi, by the time, yes, for the second time, when we went and pulled down Ayefele, it would never have happened. So because happened? I wasn't there. I wasn't there. I don't know what happened. I don't know what happened, but I wasn't there. But I know that I would have walked up to him. Because one thing Ajimobi always says is, whenever he saw me in his office, he would say, because whenever you come, it is when there is crisis. So I won't go to him to say, Your Excellency, people are saying that you are the next the best thing after the after the discovery of toothpaste. I was always going to him to raise critical issues and issues that were negative for him to address. So, so now to
now,
the Ajuri matter.
Before you get to that, I learned from reliable sources that you just affirmed it now that you are one of those people that will tell him the truth.
Well, I wasn't a saint.
What gave you? Was it because you had that
audacity?
Audacity. I don't want you to hear.
Okay. See, what happened was, I remember when we got to government. I've written this, and if you go check the archives, you see this narrative there.
Okay.
When we got to government, one major, as the head of the media, Ajimobi's media, one problem that I envisaged we were going to have was the fact that Abiola Ajimobi used to wear a Adon chain necklace.
Okay.
And don't forget that one of the narratives that we used against Akala was that he loved the things of the world. And we always put on necklace. Some even alleged that he was using leg chains. And so on. I was ahead of that narrative. And I felt people would easily use that against us. And so the very first day Ajimobi came to office, he had his necklace on. And Egmont, the current commissioner for information to Governor Seyi Makinde, Egmont Oyelade, he was Akala's publicist then, wrote a very incendiary piece in the Tribune and said that, after writing the piece, he said, by the way, I saw a 20-something carat gold necklace on the neck of the governor. He was making mockery of him. That you people said that Akala, it wasn't good that he was wearing necklace, but you have started wearing necklace. That was I had to talk to some people who went to Ajimobi, and that was the last day. Till he died, I never saw necklace on Ajimobi till he died. And so, one other problem that I saw immediately we got to government was that Ajimobi liked Agbada a lot. And I remember one day we were to go, I think that was our first assignment when he became governor. And so we were waiting for him, the convoy was already arranged. And I stood with my colleague, Toye Arulobi, who was then the special advisor on protocol. And so Governor Ajimobi emerged, which is Agbada, and we were going to inspect the state of the environment in Ibadan. So I told my colleague there'll be a problem. He said, what's the problem? I said, look, Agbada is a symbol of elitism. Don't forget that in the olden days, in traditional society, whoever was the rich men were the ones who wore Agbada, the Somaris. And I felt that it could ostracize the people from him. Don't forget that you look at presidents of the West like Barack Obama, when he rolls his sleeves.
It shows someone
who was at work, who was at one with his people.
And at the point, Fashola was
also doing that. So I remember that day, and I made up my mind I was going to tell the governor. And so I walked up to him as he approached me. I said, Your Excellency, you can't wear this Agbada. He said, why? I said, Your Excellency, Agbada on Jew, first, it is absurd because we were going on inspection. Sometimes you have to go and see the gutters and see what. Second is that they will see you as being far away from the people. That if I had my way, I wouldn't mind you wearing a t-shirt and a jean with a canvas. Of course, Ajimobi will resist, and he resisted. He said, what point am I making? So I told him the point he would be making. The point he would be making was that he was at one with the people. So, and he climbed down from his gubernatorial high horse. I went inside.
Wow.
So, but this time, I wasn't pleased, but at least he met us halfway.
Okay.
He wore a jean trousers,
Okay.
wore a t-shirt,
Okay.
but wore a jacket on it.
Okay.
But I felt that that was still
At least,
far
yeah.
better than Agbada. So, and then we got to somewhere along Old Ife Road, and we had to get him to use a shovel to to demonstrate how Oyo State people should do it. And I felt really very happy.
If you had I think it was that Agbada that he was putting on. There wouldn't have been a connection between.
Would even be there.
I mean, how could you be wearing Agbada and you are still
using
holding
the shovel?
shovel?
So that was that, and so many examples like that. I remember when a journalist was beaten, a Tribune journalist was beaten by soldiers of Operation Burst, and started receiving calls from AFP, from journalists outside Nigeria. They don't joke with press freedom. That they wanted our side of the story, and that was a delicate balance, because the soldiers were working for the Oyo State government's outfit, Operation Burst. So we couldn't condemn them outright. At the same time, we couldn't condemn the journalists. But I needed to get his reaction. So he was having a meeting. And one good thing with Governor Ajimobi, had 24-hour access, even in his bedroom. And so I got there, and the ADC, Akimoladu, said Oga was having a meeting. I said, it doesn't matter. And I stood by his door. It was a security door. He will see you coming. And he opened the door. I said, Festus, Kilario. I said, yes, there was trouble. So what was the trouble? And I explained to him. He said, hey, so what about that? I said, it's a huge issue. He said, we must tell the people where we stand. It's delicate because we can't condemn the military, or else they could say that they weren't going to work for Operation Burst again. And at the same time, we cannot say that it was good that they beat up a journalist. So he said, go and do it. You are the professional. Do it your way. So he gave me free hand, and I went out to toe the best of the line that I should. So coming to our jury, see, and of course, partly you also have to dwell on Gmombayo Ononuga and his recent statement, pillaring the Guardian. You see, that's why all things being equal, and by the grace of God, it's not a job I want to do again all the days of my life. Because I tell people it's like you're a garbage collector. It's like garbage collection.
You even have to kill your own conscience.
Yes,
just because you want to defend your principle.
It's not a job I pray to God to do again in my life. So the moment you take up that job, and what people don't realize is that for somebody like me now, if I take up a job to be a publicist of a political head or a politically exposed person, the people are no longer my constituency. My constituency is the governor or the president or whoever. And so whatever I do, for instance, I've given that example before. If I'm with the governor or the president now, and as a journalist, because I will always be a journalist, and the man collapses, do you know it's in the interest of the public to know that their president collapsed? But if I step out and the media asks me the state of the health of the president, I'll tell them it's okay. But that's a lie. And the people deserve to know the state of health of their president.
Who is leading
but you have to tell a lie.
Decisions on their behalf.
And that was what the media media advisors of politically exposed persons have always been doing, telling lies and including
especially
myself.
Starting from President Yaradua regime.
Exactly. So they needed to, as the Yoruba would say, Ojebe Lakisa. Because you can't come out. The other thing is for you to resign, tender your letter of resignation. But even in tendering your letter of resignation, nǹkan tó wà lẹ́yìn ẹ̀fà ni àbí ọ̀fà.
Ẹ̀fà ó ju èje lọ, it's number, it's not down.
Nǹkan tó wà lẹ́yìn ẹ̀fà
ó ju èje lọ.
ó ju èje. I think they said it's not the way they put it.
Okay.
It's not that.
Okay.
Somebody did an explanation.
Okay.
So there are consequences. Because for instance, you could be seeing, because you see a lot when you are in government.
Okay.
The negatives and the positives. They could see you as somebody who wants to reveal their secret. And for you as a media person, you are a threat to them. They most times they reluctantly bring you into their midst. Because they know that you pursue exclusives.
Okay.
And they see that you could leak their secret. So that's why politically exposed persons are always very circumspect in bringing journalists on turn the media advisors into their midst. So now you have to, one of the requirements of being the publicist of a politically exposed person, especially, is that you must love that person, or else you will be a failure. You must see him, you will see him either consciously or unconsciously as the ideal.
Yeah.
What betides you if that person is a sloppy person? You have to clothe him.
Yes.
I've had a boss. I'm not going to tell you who the boss is now.
Okay.
Who told me, yes, you can say what I did was not good. You can say that I'm wicked. You can say this or that. But I've done it. The deed has been done. Go there and clean me up.
Yeah, I think I read one article. Tinubu, I don't know if the person you are referring to, but I think I read one article that Tinubu has told one of his media heads that they should do their job. It's their job. They just go and what they have to do.
Exactly. You go and clean me up. The principal said, your job is to clean me up. So you are the dry cleaner, you are the agbepo. So go and clean up the mess. So that's what they do, and I feel that it's not something I want to do again. I entered the Enugu state government elsewise I was fantastic. But I came out being hypertensive because you don't sleep. People will mess up in the ministry or wherever. It's your job to clean the mess. And that's what media advisors do. So, Ajuri, they said he's one of the youngest presidential spokesmen ever. I think he's in his 40s or what. So, not the problem was not that it came from the broadcast arm of the media.
Okay.
Although, if you look into history, I think political principals always desire those who have exposures, who have quote and unquote names in the media.
Yeah.
But Ajuri got there, and I don't know what I can describe that got into him. Because for instance, he was warring, so to speak, with people like Bayo Nanuga.
Sure.
And I feel that if I were in his shoes, I wouldn't do that. I would be going to him on a daily basis so that for us to do our job, because a thin line divides their responsibilities.
Sure.
I would have worked with him no matter what. There was an allegation that the office of Onanuga wasn't getting funds. Exactly. I would have shared my own funds with him, with his office, and Onanuga would have seen me as a partner. You understand? Rather than an enemy. Second is that I spoke with my colleagues in the media. I'm talking of more than 90 editors of Nigerian newspapers never met Ajuri. And that is a killer punch. Because those are the people.
Of course,
one of the major jobs of a media advisor is to be able to link up with the editors to say, editor, please, this story could he, is that the probability of getting it on your front page? Editor, my story is coming. Please help me treat it well. I have this photograph. Please, if you can help me use it on the front page, I will appreciate. Let them see you as partner. So many of the editors never knew Ajuri. And for me, that was his major undoing. And then gradually, when the president had to choose between Ajuri and the uplift of his media, he had to sacrifice Ajuri. Yeah. So I think that was what went wrong. Yes, he was young, he didn't have exposure, but he could have, if he had the kind of training that people like us have, he could have sidestepped that landmine.
Now, I want to ask a question. If you have a friend, as in your friend, who happens to be, let me say, a politically exposed person, as you put it, which side would you be? And probably there are some negative things emanating from the office. Would you sidestep the wrongdoings, or would you go ahead and do your job?
Yes, I have so many people in government, though many of them don't want to align with me now. They are afraid of being seen with me. I remember one event when I went for a book review, and a friend of mine, my classmates at the University of Lagos, saw me. He's close to them at the top, and then didn't want to sit, close to me. Didn't want photographs of the two of us together taken, and I just laughed. So I have so many friends in government. Many don't talk to me. They don't call me. I also don't. I don't link up with any of my friends. Most of my friends, 90-something% of my friends in office. As I told you, I don't have friends. I have very, very, very little needs. But if you are my friend and I have access to you, that I can call you, I rarely call people. But if I can call you to ask you questions about the running of your office, I most likely won't write about it in the newspaper. Well, you could say that that was favoritism, but I'm also persuaded by this eternal saying that my musical idol, Lawan, said in one of his songs. He said, "Gbogbo ewe kọ́lọ̀ jáwé ń já, gbogbo ọ̀pẹ kọ́ l'onígbàǹgùn." Let me try and break it down into English. That it is not every leaf that the herbalist plucks in the forest. There are some leaves that are too toxic that the herbalist doesn't touch. And he doesn't touch it for several reasons. Maybe for the danger that the leaf poses. Okay. Or that the herbalist is so used to the leaf that they can sidestep it. So especially if I can advise you as my friend on some issues, and I see that you have taken steps, or that you are likely to take steps not to have that policy, in place, then why do I want to?
So you want to give that person the benefit of that?
Yes, I want
at least
to
you do the right thing. Now, one of the things that when I was doing my research about you was that when you were offered an appointment by the Senate President.
Yes.
And after a couple of days, it was withdrawn. So what really happened?
Okay. This view that I espoused a few minutes back of after I left Ajimobi government, I made up my mind that I wasn't going to be a media advisor to anybody again in my life. And it was further reinforced by my only meeting with former governor, my chance meeting with former governor Rashidi Ladoja at an event at the University of Ibadan. We were on the high table. I think it was Babatunde Oduyoye birthday lecture. So he sat on the high table. Former CJ of Oyo State was also there. And so I think I was one of the guest speakers or whatever. So when we finished the event, I went to him and prostrated. He said, Festus Adedayo. He held my hand. That was the first time we did meeting. And he said, do you know that I was one of those who carried placards? Of course, not literally. That I was one of those who carried placards when they announced you as special advisor on media to the Senate president. I said, your brain is more than those who are in that. They should be your media advisor. You know, I took a cue from it and said, look, you are this, you are that, and you shouldn't be. That kind of job is beneath you. And I agreed with him absolutely. So I made up my mind I wasn't going to do that job anymore. And then one day in 2019, I was at the Nigerian Law School. You know, I went to the law school as an old person. So 2019, I was at the Nigerian Law School, Lagos campus. And then I think we were doing our extension. Yes, extension. And I was at home one day, left my phone on my bed. I went to the restroom. By the time I got back, I found out that I had a missed call. It was from my friend, Yusuf Olaniyon. Yusuf Olaniyon was commissioner for information under Amosun in Ogun State. Was also special advisor on media to Senator Bukola Saraki. So it was the twilight of their of his being at the Senate with Saraki. So he now said the Senate president, the new Senate president, wanted his chief of staff, what's his name now? Baba Ahmed, to recruit his media advisor. And so the chief of staff now told him, being an experienced journalist, I should help him nominate persons for the office. So when I saw the missed call, I called Yusuf Olaniyon, my friend. I called him back. Yusuf Olaniyon used to be the editor of Tuesday. So he now told me what he wanted, narrated the story, and that he felt I was one of the people he needed to contact. And I told him point blank that I was not interested. And I said, Yusuf, you know I'm not an arrogant person. It's just that I don't want to do that job. And I pleaded with him not to see it as arrogance. And we hung up. But of course, my wife was with me and said that, why didn't I bounce that information with few of my friends who she knew I respected a lot. So I bounced it on two of my friends. Don't let me mention their names. And one told me that, look, he's an Akure man. He said, look, it's an opportunity. It will be an opportunity for you to help our unemployed youth in Akure. That you could use your position to help them. Then the second person, from the angle of self, said, if you take up this appointment, you are just a local player. You've been operating at the state level. To be an opportunity for you to also
go federal,
have a nice thing on the cake. And I think about it. But moreover, I felt that it was a mistake. That at the end of the day, and God is my witness, I kept on believing that no person in their right senses will make me a media advisor in a Buhari government. I just wanted to push it through to get to a point because I knew there would be a DSS screening. I'm no DSS man. what is onion? Will say that you passed my nomination. So, but I wanted to enjoy it as well. So I called Yusuf. I said he could go ahead. And so, but 1 week, I wasn't invited and I was getting happy. I thank God at the end of the day. Only for one Sunday evening, around 9 p.m., I received a call from Dr. Hakeem Baba Ahmed. I said that the Senate President wants to see me the second day in Abuja. So to cut a long story short, I was with him. I've forgotten that hotel. I think it's Nikon Hills. And so I was with him. I had printed 2 copies of my CV. And so he invited me, he interviewed some other people. Yeah. And so I sat down, the 2 of them, the Senate President and Hakeem Baba Ahmed. And the Senate President, and so I gave them, the 2 of them, the 2 copies of my CV. And I saw that the Senate President was reading it with rapt interest. And he said, Dr. Adedayo, how did you manage to acquire this string of degrees? You have BA philosophy, you have MSc political science, you have a PhD in political communication from the Department of Political Science, University of Ibadan. You have LLB, second class upper from the University of Ibadan. And now you are at the law school. So it was an opportunity to tell my story. Part of the story of my life that I told you in this interview. And he was listening. And then the next thing he said was that when you come on board, not if you come on board, these are the things I want you to do. And I remember he said that there's this narrative that I'm a villa person. I want you to change the narrative, that I'm an independent person. I want the best for Nigeria, blah, blah, blah. So I left him around 10 p.m. and I went to sleep in an hotel. They said I shouldn't leave here, that they would get back to me. So around 12 in the afternoon, Dr. Hakeem Baba Ahmed called me and said, congratulations, you have been chosen. And so I went to the airport. And I was at the airport when the news was announced. And my phone, it was something else. So I had to switch off my phone. By the time I landed in Ibadan, it was something else. And so don't forget. And do you know one of the reasons why I didn't want to? Because I have phobia for air travel. It's a funny reason. Because I knew I would be traveling with the Senate, and I said I don't like air travels at all. It was one of the reasons why I even didn't want that job. When I was with Nnamani, he knew that I had phobia. I'd rather travel by road. And all that. So that was it. And thereafter, all hell was let loose. It became the most talked about issue in Nigeria. And the wife of the president then, Buhari, tweeted that this man is our enemy. And I learned that it was coordinated by Rauf Aregbesola and his Ireland, who is now the APC National Secretary. What's his name now? I can't remember his name. It was coordinated by them. So they just all just worked for my good, because they made me famous in Nigeria. I was not famous before that time, so they made me famous. So that was all. So the question was that, what was your question? Sorry.
No, that was my question.
Okay, how it happened.
How it happened, exactly.
Okay, that was right.
Now, I have 2 questions, and we'll round up. I know my producer is giving me signs. Now, the first question is, did you in any way feel bad? Did you in any way feel bad that probably if you had any chance, you will have changed maybe your kind of writing such that you wouldn't have been denied that kind of opportunity. That's number one. Number two, because I one of those people that debated that issue when it was really burning with a colleague of mine. Then that okay, if you like someone I would refer to as a media activist, you always politicians would do they should do that, and you are invited that they should come and join them. So I would have thought that because at that point when you are invited and you agree, you are going to sing a different tune.
Yes. Okay, let me tell you this.
So where is the conscience? That's my question.
You see, to tell you the truth, with the benefit of hindsight, I really thank God. That was going to be my major undoing in life. But I accepted that
appointment
had sailed. Don't forget that at the time that Dr. Ahmed called, he said, we are going to be sending you an offer. So which I will also need to really sit down to study whether I wanted to. But as I said, I'm not excusing. I shouldn't. If one makes people make mistakes in life. That was going to be a fatal mistake that I would never have been able to emerge from. One is that the man I was going to be his appointee ended up as a colossal failure. Because people feel that it was just a rubber stamp. It would have rubbed off on me.
Because, I mean,
people
you will have lost your...
Yes, that this man collapsed from the height of his media activism into being... In fact, there was a particular day, my younger colleague, Moses, formerly of the Nigerian Tribune.
Is it Moses Alao?
Moses Alao.
Okay, now
there was a day he sent me a message. He said, the day the Senate president said that every bill emanating from President Buhari, the Senate would approve it. So Moses now said, congratulations. That I imagine what would have happened if that kind of statement was pushed out by Festus.
Adedayo. You wouldn't have any choice, would have done it.
I would have done it, and it would have been my major undoing. So I really thank God. I still revere my friends who advised me to go take up that job. My friends, they wanted the best for me.
Sure.
But that best would have been my ruin. Have led to
because there wouldn't have been Festus Adedayo anymore.
Yeah, that wouldn't have been Festus. Because you see, now people say, hey, Festus Adedayo is a good writer, is all that. But there were people who were fantastic writers, columnists before me. But they were, quote and unquote, submerged by their involvement with political principles. So I really, whenever I wake up, I thank my God. Because I was going to go inside a ditch without appointment. But God, in His infinite mercy, helped me to sidestep that ditch. However, having said that, I am of the opinion that, first, people have a very perverse thinking about acceptance of political offices. I mean, especially being advisors to political principles. For instance, it was when if you operate at the theoretical level, you are not likely to know theoretical level of writing.
Okay.
As a journalist or a columnist.
Yeah.
You are not likely to know the nitty-gritty of the way politicians work.
In fact, sir, sorry, because I wanted to, you said something, I read something that when you were in Enugu, when you were working with Dr. Marokina man, you thought the people from that part of the country that probably there are some words you use that when it comes to people of bad character and stuff like that you thought probably that was where the worst people are. But as soon as you got...
Yeah, you begin to see people in their different... Let me also tell you that as at the time before I went into government, if anybody told me that thugs must be factored into analysis of political office holding or of government, the running of government. I wouldn't have thought that it was talks. There's hardly any government in Nigeria today that does not have that arm of violence that they could use to push back against the opposition.
Wow.
It was when I got into government that I found out that it was a major arm of every government in Nigeria. There were some other issues on which I was naive before I went into. So if I'm writing now, from my experience as a columnist and my experience of being in government, my analysis is likely to be far deeper than somebody who hasn't gone into government. So we need more and more journalists to go into public offices. But at the same time, I will warn that somebody, yes, it's good for you to learn, but at the same time, those in public offices, especially journalists, must be weary of the antics of politicians and political principles, so that it does not destroy them. For instance, if you work with a political principal who becomes a liability to society, you are likely to sink with that political principal. If your principal was acknowledged as a thief, people are likely to see you as a thief, even though the man will not say, Festus Adedayo, please, I'm going to steal this money. So please, he won't tell you. You'll be looking at him as a saint. You understand? Only for you to later learn that this man has stolen billions and billions of naira. And if you are not careful, whenever you are walking on the road, people will say, see that man, on judge you win. So those are the things that you must be wary of. And I think that society must also look at it from a different lens.
Now, I don't know, my producer, do I have a few minutes? Because I have 2 questions. Number one, I want to talk about your academic attainments and your love for Ayinla Omowura. I want you to explain
so at
the
what
connection.
Point did they converge? So happened that
I don't know.
It so happened that my father used to buy those days cassettes of many of these musicians. Abulu Ade, Esaka Baba YD, Ayinla Omowura, Alhaji Dauda Epo Akara, Sikiru Ayinde Barrister. And also, fortunately for me, I used to, most of the places where we live, we used to have record stores, you know, at the front of our houses. And so when any record came out, as little children, we all rushed to the record store and be listening. So I began to love Epo Akara, loved Barrister. You know, songs like Barristers, when he sang, I'll remember now. This is the song I love most of all the songs of Barrister. I've forgotten that. You know, when he had an accident in the 1970s. I've forgotten the song. So, I mean, and of course, the songs of Epo Akara, I loved. In fact, it was also the love for Barrister by me was so high that if I was to write a book, it should have been Barrister ordinarily. I also, you know, Epo Akara, there's no song of Epo Akara that I cannot sing often.
All this is my mother.
Àwa mẹ́rin lára jò. Then this one, that's Omobuade when they had an accident. Omobuade and Dauda. Àwa mẹ́rin lára jò. Àwa mẹ́rin lára jò. Àwọn méjì ní òde o. Omobuade pẹ̀lú Dauda.
Jáde láyé o.
Àwa tí à ń bẹ a ò lóhùn Ọlọ́run lọ́yọ̀ ni. And then Èmi pẹ̀lú bàbá mi lájọ sórí ẹni. Mo ṣíjú wa apá ọ̀tún mọ̀ bá kèlè lórí ẹni. Mo ní bàbá mi níbo ni fi kèlè sí. And for me, that was one of the most profound songs of Alhaji Dauda Ikwakara. Àwọn àgbà olórin èmi ṣe bá a lọ́wọ́ wọn ẹ ṣàká o you know and ẹ bá mi kí ọ̀rẹ́ mi Alhaji Síkírù Àyìndé Barrister o. You know, wow. and
so to you those songs are more than musical reading.
No, look, most times when I write my column,
okay,
I play the songs of Epo Akara, play the songs of Ayinla Omowura, listen to them, and then they inspire me whenever I want to write. But 1980, when Ayinla Omowura was killed, I was downcast. I remember it was, they said he's the uncle of the owner of Adedayo. What's his name?
Oriyomi Hamzat.
Hamzat. His name was, what's his first name now? It was Hamzat.
Okay.
He had tribal marks.
Okay, yeah. Alhaji, isn't it Olawale Hamzat?
I can't remember.
Yeah.
So it was the one. I think it was in NTA. It was the one who announced the murder of Ayinla Omowura. I still remember I watched that on NTA, and I was so downcast that it spurred my interest in Ayinla Omowura.
So it was after his death that you began.
I began to love him more. So I singled him out, so to speak, among other musicians.
But his song is full of incantations.
Yes. What is wrong with incantations? There's nothing wrong with incantations.
What I'm saying is, I would have thought that you are kind of elite.
I'm not a butter person. I'm not a butter person at all.
Real?
No, just look at my face and think that I'm a butter person.
I still see butter.
No, I'm not butter. I used to go to the farm, and that's why I'm able to connect with the narrative. My friend Lasisi Olaguju, some of the things that I say, the Bible will say, so and you know that. I say, what do you think of me? You think we used to go to the farm. Those days, I would do 200 heaps between 7 a.m. and 12 in the afternoon.
Wow.
I had a friend then, Noreni Ladibu, when we were in Lisha. We do heaps. My father encouraged us. We'll go to his farm, he'll give us money. By that time, I had just left secondary school. So we'll go to my father's farm, we'll do heaps, 200, between 7 a.m. and 12 p.m. 12 p.m. We'd have dug 200 heaps. So I now began to love Ayinla Omowura. And but at some point, I also veered into reggae.
Okay.
Loved Peter Tosh, Bob Marley, Tooth and the Maytals, and all that. In fact, when I was in Unilag, one of the pieces I wrote was in 1991 for Punch.
Okay.
Punch newspaper used it, I think, about 4 pages.
Wow.
In 1991. Bob Marley, a decade after, 1991. You know, he died in 1991. And for me, that shot me up to the top, that I could, making me to realize that I could be a journalist if I left the university. So, but when I went to Enugu in 2003, out of boredom, I came back to Ibadan and bought all the cassettes of Ayinla Omowura, and I was listening to them in Enugu. And so, in 2004, I think it was 2004, I did a piece for The Guardian on Ayinla Omowura. And the title was Ayinla Omowura. 1994 to 1980. That's how many years? That's 20. Ayinla Omowura. 24 years after the Sibarite. That was the title. A Sibarite is somebody who lives a life of pleasure, of drink, of women, of enjoyment. And that piece, Guardian used it for about 4 pages as well.
Wow.
Splashed photographs of Ayinla Omowura. And so people began to call me, you know this man? I said, I never met him. But as I had acquired enough research ability to know that I could do a research into even by listening to the person's music. So you'll be able to paint the
gifted.
canvas of the man's life. So I wrote it, and so people were saying, why don't you write a book? If I said book, So, and I prevaricate a lot. Thereafter, even when I came back from Enugu, I wrote articles for newspapers, for Sunday Tribune, for many other papers on Ayinla Ọmọwúrà. And so in 2019 or 2020, I was lucky to meet a guy. He's late now.
Okay.
His name is Waid Ganiyu.
Okay.
So who just walked up to me and said, Egbon, why don't you write a book on Ayinla Ọmọwúrà? I say, a book? I said, okay. He said, I'll be there to help you. So I said, okay. So he kept on nudging me on write the book. So at some point, he connected me with one other guy who lives in Abeokuta. He's a journalist as well.
Okay.
His name is Idris Oderinde.
Okay.
So I invited him to Ibadan and told him, yes, can you be my research assistant? Since we live in Abeokuta and Ayinla Ọmọwúrà lived in it. He said yes. And so I agreed to pay him for his job. I said, I give you, I think 2 or 3 months, to do that research. So, and we agreed on the amounts. And so the guy did the research, did the recordings. In fact, he did a yeoman's job. But he will invite me for the big ones. For instance, I went to interview one of Ayinla Ọmọwúrà's wives called Yagba. I went to interview Alhaji Kollington Ayinla. There was also a colleague of Ayinla Ọmọwúrà in Apala. I'm sure the man is late now. As at that time, it was almost, it was over 80 years. So he gave me, so we interviewed so many people. And so I sat in this office. And I wrote that book, I think, under 2 months. In this office. So, and then I also went to see my friend in Oxford. About 2 weeks, I devoted time to writing it. I also went to Atlanta, my friend's place in Atlanta. I was all alone. I was writing. Under 2 months, I had written over, a book that became over 500 pages. That was it. And I remember when I was writing it, one of my friends called me and said, don't print more than 200 copies because nobody will buy it, because that people won't connect it. And that book became my major, if there's any word so-called, uplifter.
Wow. How do you mean, sir?
Because, for instance, I was invited by the African Studies Association in 2022 to Philadelphia.
Wow.
To make a presentation on what I wrote in this book.
Now, lastly, sir, I think I being a print journalist, I've always looked at the opportunities, in this profession. Now, I'm looking at someone like you, the height you have reached through print journalism. What is going to be your advice for the upcoming ones? What are the things that they need to do so that they can stand out among the crowd?
Okay. Since I started active journalism in 1995, I've never done any other thing. I've never done any business. I don't even know how to do
business.
The gift that God has given me is writing. And people have told me that, look, you can reach for the sky through this gift. And it is what I've leveraged on. When I left government in 2015, as I told you earlier, I told myself, I've had several offers to be in government, which I rejected. I don't ever want to. If God says, Festus Adedayo today, I don't want to ever be in government. If God says it, as a person. You know, you tell,
of course,
you
sure.
tell God what you want. At the end of the day, God may say that is not what I want for you. But I, Festus, I did that today. I don't ever want to be in government. I enjoy connecting with the people weekly. When I write weekly, people will abuse me. People will praise me. Sundays are my best days on earth.
Okay. So you sit down and read.
I read attacks, praises.
And there's need for you to write the rejoinder.
Yeah. So one thing you cannot take off me is that I'm also contributing my quota to the running of Nigeria. I don't have to be a politician. I don't have to be in government to be able to contribute my quota. You may not like what I write, but you will see the rigor that I put into writing. I say that this person, and since I started writing since 1998, I have never collected a penny from what I write. Nobody has given me £1 for writing the column that I write. But that column writing has pushed me to the top. I've met people at the top who say, "Oh, this is Festus Adedayo, I will read you." And you know, that's exciting. I've also leveraged on my writing. People ask me to write speeches for them, and they give me money for writing speeches. People have asked me to write position papers, and I do write position papers, and I collect money. I'm a consultant to some big companies in Nigeria. You know, I consult for them, and they pay me.
Of course.
I've consulted for organizations that paid me dollars. And so that's true writing. I said, when it comes to the business of writing, I said, what can I do that looks like my writing? So I established a printing press.
Okay.
My printing press published my book.
Wow.
When I printed my book on Lawan.
Is it the one
downstairs? That's my printing press.
You own this building, sir?
I own the building. Wow. It's also a product of the things I put together to be able to sustain myself. So I print for established publishers in Nigeria, children's books and all that. And so I'm able to pay my bills from there. So my advice I've had people who come here, journalists who come to my office, who I advise that, look, he said, and I quote, will not take you anywhere.
I swear.
And then
honestly,
we are in an age where journalism, print press, honestly, is almost going into extinction. And so you must leverage on your writing talent. Look at how I branched out to write a book. So if you are naming authors in Nigeria, now you name Festus Adedayo. I also do autobiography. There are some big people whose autobiographies I also ghostwrite autobiographies, and they pay me. I've ghostwritten autobiographies that I was paid in dollars for writing. And so that's also branching out of the said and I quote. Many people don't know that the last time I engaged in active journalism practice was 21 years ago when I left Tribune in 2003. You know, today people say Festus Adedayo of the Tribune. I stopped being a staff of the Sunday Tribune, 21 years ago. Although my friends are there running, I'm also a member of the editorial board. Of course, you know, that's a part-time thing. So I advise journalists to leverage on their talent and branch out. If you're a broadcast journalist, can you do podcasts? Can you do some other interventions that will bring you money? Because, and then, you know, I also advise journalists to seek them first. Seek ye first the kingdom of a good name. And all other things shall be added unto them. If you are known as an egunje taker, as a journalist, you are not likely to go far in this profession. But if you are known as somebody who does his job well, there's a tendency for you to go far in the journalism profession. That was what I was able to leverage to the glory of God.
Glory of God.
People see me now as maybe a conscience of the people. You can't be a conscience of the people if you engage in bribe taking.
It's not possible.
If you are, some of our colleagues also blackmail. If you blackmail, yes, you collect money, but the person you blackmail, you never can tell where he will be tomorrow.
Sir,
he will continue to see you. He will collect the money, but he will never see you as an exemplar. One thing here in Ibadan, in Oyo State, many, unless now that you people come to me now to show me to the work, people don't know who Festus Adedayo is. I am a social. I rarely go to parties. I don't have friends. I only go play my squash. If anything will separate my love for squash,
so
then there will be
if
trouble.
I wanted to ask, how did you unwind?
Yes, I play squash.
That's all.
I play squash. Squash. Nothing else. I exercise, play squash, and squash is my life.
In the line of your work, who is that person that you met that you were starstruck?
Okay. People, at some point in my journalism career, my writings were very turgid. And then it was because I was patterning my writings towards the writings of a man called Alex Laguma. Okay. Alex Laguma was a South African writer who wrote the Threefold Code, I've forgotten that title now. He wrote A Walk in the Night, in the Time of the Butcher Bed, and all that. So his writings were turgid. But along the line, I learned to water my writings down so that I could have more readership. And I think I've effectively done that now. So Alex Aguma was my writing icon. In journalism, I hold the writings, even though it's late now, of Delegiwa in high esteem. I was old enough in 1986 when he was assassinated by Pasu bomb. I used to read this parallax snap column in the Newswatch. I enjoyed it. It was also very turgid. If you read his column, it wasn't. It was also had some kind of turgidity in his writing, and so those were my heroes, my icons.
All right. Wow. Thank you very much, sir, once again for excuse me, granting us this, because I know you are a very busy person, and you have spoken well, you have spoken very far and very deeply, and really appreciate you, my Uncensored crew. Really appreciate you profoundly, sir.
Thank you.
Now, so on this point that we are going to draw the curtain on this week podcast of Mike Uncensored, and I know you've learned a lot. You've learned behind the scenes, which is what this podcast is all about. And until next week, when we are going to be bringing in another interesting personality with an enriching and a unique experience, we want to implore you to please like us and follow us on our Facebook page, follow us on our Instagram and TikTok, and please subscribe to our channel, our YouTube channel, please. That's the only way you can support us. Subscribe, press the notification button, comment, and share. So at this point, I want to say sincerely, we appreciate every one of you who has been following us, and we pray that you continue to follow us. So until next week, do have a blessed day.